think I'll just say a little bit about tonight's topic then. As I was saying, it's about spiritual death, but I'll come to that in a moment. I mean, spiritual death doesn't sound particularly attractive to our sort of cultural conditioning. Death's usually associated with something that's a bit miserable, isn't it? Funerals, death, and it's sadness. It's not kind. Sometimes it doesn't seem like the best terminology for what it really is. But there's a good reason why our teacher in Sri Ratan Sangharakshita has chosen that metaphor for this particular phase in the path, and I'll touch on that in a minute. We're all probably familiar with the image of the Buddha. It's one of the central images of the Buddha, and when we were having a little chat before the class, Sachapra's Buddha just behind her shoulder really caught my eye, the meditating Buddha, and just this image of peace, of serenity, and happiness. That's the other thing, it's balanced happiness. And I suppose every religion's got those central images, and for us it seems to be the most common image that we think of when we think of Buddhism is the Buddha meditating happily under the Bodhi tree, and very mindful, very present. And sometimes I find it useful before I'm doing a mindfulness practice to think about the Buddha, to bring him to mind, to remember that the Buddha really valued meditation and particularly really valued mindfulness. He was an incredibly mindful person. Not only did he do sitting mindfulness practice like we're going to do later tonight, when he walked he was mindful, when he ate he was mindful, when he was communicating with people he was mindful. He really, really valued mindfulness. And from the early scriptures or suttas, the early records, if you like, of the Buddha's teaching, which go way back 2,500 or so years back in ancient India, we can get a sense of how the Buddha practiced mindfulness. It's clear there was 4 kind of main areas of mindfulness that were really important for the Buddha. There was awareness of the body. So when we're practicing mindfulness, we always start off, don't we, with bringing our awareness into our body, really connecting with our bodily experience, our physical experience, and that brings us directly into the present moment, directly into a direct experience, because so often we can be up in our heads in the future, in the past, daydreaming, thinking about all sorts of things, but we're not really present with our actual experience. So it's so important to connect with the body. Then the second aspect the Buddha always liked to bring his mindfulness to was feelings. Just through the body, sensing how we actually feel at the moment. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? So important. Again, it really just helps you come out of your head and all the papancha, the proliferating thought, and just come back into direct experience through the body. So just noting the feelings. And thirdly, he liked to look at his thoughts. Thoughts with the Buddha also included emotions. It's like what was he thinking about, and what sort of emotions was his thoughts in a way producing, conditioning? Was it thoughts that were leading to calmness, or was it thoughts that were taking him away from his direct experience, that were leading to suffering? And then lastly, there's this kind of slightly mysterious area of mindfulness called awareness of dhammas. That's the Pali for Dharma. And I think in this context, it just means a kind of the structure of reality, if you like, the structure of experience. And the thing that the Buddha always noted, and I suppose if you know anything about Buddhism, either directly or kind of vaguely, you know that the Buddha taught that everything changes, that everything's impermanent. It's like the fundamental insight of the Buddha was that everything arises in dependence on conditions, And also everything ceases, everything fades away, everything changes independent on conditions. And this is true for everything. It's true for everything that we experience, everything around us. This Buddhist centre, beautiful Buddhist centre, 100 years ago or so, historically, it was a theatre. It was quite a popular theatre. And then it was closed for decades and decades. And then in the late 90s, the Buddhist Centre Trust acquired it and turned it into a Buddhist Centre. Change, it's happening all the time. We're getting older. Seasons are changing. Winter's gone into spring, spring's starting to come into summer. Weather changes. We can really notice very easily the externals, how they change. Although we often do forget, don't we? But it's easier to notice the externals changing. People we work with might leave and move on, more change. So everything changes, and Buddha encourages us in his approach to mindfulness to really be aware of change, to really be aware of impermanence, to really be aware that things arise in dependence on conditions, and also cease in dependence on conditions. And this smile, the happiness that we see on the Buddha's face, that beautiful serenity that radiates from the Buddha's presence, is because he's deeply understood that truth of impermanence, of change. And that has led to an experience of liberation, of freedom, a very deep level of freedom. So it's worth pondering that when we're doing our mindfulness practice later this evening. We're working with our mind. We might start off with a mind that doesn't feel very pleasant, but as we stay with it, the mind changes and becomes happier, more content, more aware. So that's change again. It's just changing in relation to conditions. We bring awareness into our experience, and our experience changes in relation to the new condition of awareness that we brought to it. So this is like a universal, intrinsic principle that the Buddha really encouraged us to be aware of. So body, feelings, thoughts and emotions, and also universal principles like change. So it's really important to reflect on that. And this relates very strongly to this stage of human flourishing that we're going to be exploring in more depth on Saturday, which is called Spiritual Death by Sangharakshita, our teacher. But what does that really mean? What does that really mean, spiritual death? Death of what, exactly? It's a kind of very vivid, graphic metaphor, isn't it? Spiritual death. So what is dying? Well, what's dying is our sense of ourself, our sense of our ego or identity, our conditioned sense of ourself. That's what's dying in this stage. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute. One of the sort of geniuses of the Buddha, reflecting on his teachings for years and years and years, one of the geniuses of the Buddha was he didn't just look at the external. So when he saw impermanence, it's easier to see it in the external world, but he started to ask himself about, I suppose what you'd call it, the observer, the person that's looking. So who is this person that is observing experience, observing objects, observing the room? Who is this person that has these preferences, these likes, these dislikes? Who is this person that has this kind of personality? So he kind of turned it into the inner world as well as the external world. And this is a sort of a really important shift that led to freedom for the Buddha. He'd already taught a lot of really amazing things. He taught, as we've explored over the last few weeks, he taught how to get integrated. He talked about ethical sensitivity. He talked about aligning ourselves with the law of karma. In other words, aligning ourselves with the fact that actions have consequences, and that if we become sensitive to that, we can shape our minds so that they become happier. If we go against this intrinsic law of karma, a bit like trying to go against the law of gravity, then we'll suffer. But and if that's, and in a way for me, if that's all he taught, it's good enough, because I've benefited immensely just from those aspects of his teaching. I've become happier, I've become maturer, I've become more ethical, I've become more positive. So the teaching, just at that level, I found fantastic. But the Buddha is saying there's even more, but it's subtler. And he encourages us to actually look even deeper at our experience, look at how we construct our experience, look at the person who is constructing the experience, looking at the observer as well as the observed. And what he found was, through mindfulness practice, he found that even this sense of self was no different from everything else. It was subject to conditions. It was subject to change. It wasn't permanent, it wasn't fixed. And this is counterintuitive, because if you're like me, you just feel that your sense of self is like you. This is me, I've always had this sense of self. There's always been Dharmasiddhi. And it feels incredibly, real, it feels incredibly permanent. But what the Buddha is encouraging us to do in this stage of human flourishing is to question that. Is it true? Is it really true? And what he discovered, and he asks us to take on trust, is that actually even our sense of self is subject to change, is subject to conditions. Now that could sound, some people might find that attractive, some people might not. But what I just want to say, that doesn't mean that there's nothing. It's not some nihilistic black hole of distress because you haven't got a self. What actually happens, and this is the sort of wonderful aspect of this teaching of spiritual death, and in a way we can't really separate it from the last stage of spiritual rebirth, because they're two sides of the same coin, is that once we start to let go of ourself, something else comes into play that isn't relying on our will, isn't relying on our thoughts, isn't relying on our choice. And this conditionality, this law, is deeply meaningful, it's deeply enriching, it's incredibly valuable. And when it starts to happen, you feel so alive, you start to feel liberated on a deep, incredibly deep level. And you get a sense of it being the most meaningful thing that's ever happened to you. Some of the metaphors in Buddhism describe it as like a blind man finding a jewel in a dung heap. It's almost like you can't believe it's happened. It's like, the chances of a blind man finding a jewel in a dung heap are extremely rare. Is the kind of meaning, I think, of the metaphor. So it's subtle. So is it realistic that we might be able to sense this stage of human flourishing? Is it realistic? It sounds quite different from our assumptions about things. Usually, if you're like me, I'm thinking of just becoming a better person, a more ethical person, developing qualities. It's a great thing to do. This next two stages are basically turning that a little bit on their head. It's not negating it. You still need those stages because they're a bridge to these last two stages. Positive emotion, emotions like metta, like compassion, they have a sort of, they take us out of ourself. They take us out of ourself, and this is the loosening up, if you like, of our attachment to ourself that leads to this flow of something. It's something that flows into us, but it's not us. It's another order of experience. So I feel humble trying to even communicate what it is, but it's getting our head round the fact that there's something that can come into our experience, which is deeply meaningful, but isn't dependent on us in a certain sense. We can't will it, we can't make it happen. We can invite it almost, but it will come when it's ready, so to speak. It's not God. I'm not talking about God. I'm not talking about divinity. It's something intrinsic to the universe, if you like, intrinsic to the way things are. This was the Buddha's discovery. So it's like a movement from, if you like, the first stages of human flourishing are a movement from maybe like what you might call an immature ego to a mature ego. And the next two stages are, if you like, a movement from ego to egolessness. It's a bit like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Maybe the caterpillar just wants to become a better caterpillar, more efficient at munching the leaves. But it's not aware that actually one day it will become a butterfly, very beautiful, and fly off. They're related, but they're different. So bringing that down to earth for the practice this evening, how can we sort of try and notice this aspect of spiritual death, this aspect of something unfolding that's not part of self? Well, I think notice it in terms of your preferences, what you pick and choose. Notice it in terms of the stories you're telling yourself. When we learn meditation, we get taught how to work with 5 hindrances: craving, anger, restlessness, tiredness, doubt. The thing about all these hindrances is that they're all rooted in self. They're all rooted in you being at the centre of them. So if you're having a fantasy about what you're going to have for dinner later, it's always about you. Or if you're kind of chewing over something that went down in work that you're not happy about and you're angry, it's somehow always about you. Can you loosen that up? Can you let it go? This is the sort of EastEnders of our minds going on, because in EastEnders there's always drama, isn't there? And sometimes in a meditation it's like an episode of EastEnders, isn't it? But we're always at the centre of it. Can we loosen it up? Can we change it? So what I would say this evening is, when we start doing the mindfulness in a minute, is just see if you can notice the self at the centre of our hindrances. See if you can let it go, loosen it up, notice what happens. Does something change? Does something shift? Does it allow positivity to flow into your being more? So there's something to think about. So I'm going to leave it there, and if you want to just start getting yourself ready for a period of mindfulness, just getting yourself comfortable. If you're sitting on cushions or sitting on a chair like myself, just getting yourself comfortable so that you can sit for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes or so is what we're going to say. So we'll have 4 or 5 minute stages of mindfulness. Just closing your eyes, starting to become more present. And you can do that, of course, by bringing your awareness into your body, first of all, just like the Buddha did all those centuries ago, millennia ago, under the Bodhi tree. It's collecting your awareness in your body. So first of all, just perhaps bringing your awareness to your toes. I always like starting with the toes. Feeling and sensing into the toes in your right foot. What are you noticing? Similarly with the left foot. Do you notice the toes individually, or is it just one massive sensation? There's no distinction between the toes. And just sensing into the rest of your feet, the arches, the ankles, tendons are there, the small bones in the feet. Drawing your awareness into your lower legs, the calf muscles, the shins, the knees. Just getting curious as to what's there. Is it tension? What's the temperature like on the skin of your lower legs? What are the joints like in your knees? Do they feel any tightness? Or is it open, relaxed? Drawing your awareness along your upper legs to your pelvis, feeling your sitting bones, just making sure you're balanced on your sitting bones, comfortable, and just softening the big muscles in the legs, just letting them sink down, so to speak, into the earth. Just inviting those huge muscles that do so much work, walking around all day, just inviting them to soften, relax, let go. And just tracing your awareness along your spine and back, from the lower back up until the middle back, between the shoulder blades, and then right up to the shoulders and neck. You know your back, everyone's back's a little bit different. You know where you might gather tension. Some people get it in the lower back, some people in the middle. Some people get this lovely knot of tension between the shoulder blades and tense shoulders. Just see if you can soften any tension that you might notice. And just let the shoulders go. Let the neck soften and the throat soften. As your shoulders let go, just feel your awareness come right down your arms, lengthening the muscles in your upper arms, softening elbows, relaxing the lower arms, the wrists, hands and the fingers. Just being aware of the sensations at the tips of your fingers. Softening your face, allowing the muscles around your eyes, all those little muscles, just to soften and relax and let go. Just enjoy any feeling of letting go that you might notice. Your eyelids becoming heavier as they relax more and more. Relaxation spreading through your face, into the jaw, the mouth, throat. Aware of your chest, noticing how the chest rises and falls with the breath. Opening the chest, softening the chest and the heart. Noticing how your belly, your abdomen moves in and out as the breath comes in and out. Just allowing the breath to be natural, softening the abdomen, softening the belly. And just scanning through your whole body, noticing what you notice, noticing how the body feels, noticing the energy in the body. Is it high energy or is it low energy, or is the balance just about right? Where's the energy flowing most noticeably? Where does the energy not flow? Is there any holding that's preventing the flow of the energy? So gathering yourself, gathering your awareness, expanding it through your whole body. Just start to become more aware of the breath, become more interested in the breath. Noticing the quality of the breath as it enters your body through the nose, down through the throat, into the lungs and abdomen. Notice how it subtly pulls on the muscles and the neck and shoulders, down the arms, right down to the legs and feet. Just subtly, the breath massages all these muscle groups in the body, just noticing that effect from the breathing. And being present in the present moment, connected to the body, changing sensations. Also just aware of the sounds around you. Maybe there's sounds passing by outside or in the other room where you might be sitting. Just noticing them, just being aware of them, not doing anything to change it. And using the breath, so to speak, as an anchor for your awareness. So if the mind wanders, as the mind will, as minds tend to do, that's okay. It's not a problem. Just noting that the mind has wandered and coming back to the direct sensations of the breath that you're experiencing right here, right now. If it helps to use the counting, you can use counting at the end of the out breath. It might help to note whether your mind is present, or if it's not present, it's being pulled away, just noting the hindrance. Is it craving, distraction? Is it ill will, irritation? Is it tiredness? Is it restlessness? How still is your body feeling? Are you anxious about something? How confident are you feeling about the practice? Is there any doubts? Not getting involved in the hindrance, but just noting it. Coming back to the anchor of the breath. Coming back to the sensations in the body. Just noticing the shape of your mind this evening. It might be that the shape of your mind is very much to do what you've done today. Maybe it wasn't an easy day, and now that you're sitting down, you're feeling what you experienced during the day. You're here now, in the present moment, gathering yourself. And how does that feel now? Just noticing any pleasant feelings that might be arising in the practice. Acknowledging any unpleasant feelings. You don't have to react to the unpleasant feelings, you can just let them be in your awareness. Befriend them even. If you're starting to feel settled, just noting the quality of being settled, the mind settling onto the object of the breath. And see if you can notice any subtle sensations of the breath. It might be the temperature, it might be where the breath first touches the body as it enters the body. It might be the nostril, for example, or the top of the lip, perhaps. So allow the awareness to become even more subtle, more refined. As we gradually bring this mindfulness practice to a close, let's bring into mind the image of the Buddha sitting in mindfulness practice under the Bodhi tree in India. It's being aware of how mindful he is, how peaceful, how serene and happy he looks as he's meditating. His mind is at ease, he's contented. He's also let go of the ego-based self, let go of preferences, and something has flowed into his being when his self has softened and ceased. So in your own time, just bringing the practice to a close, opening your eyes, just recollecting how the practice went. And this is the part of the class where it's an opportunity to ask any questions that you might want to ask. It could be about something I mentioned earlier, or it could be about something to do with your own practice or study. It's whatever you like, really. It's an open space for about 10-15 minutes. If you've got any questions, any comments or thoughts, feel free to type them into the comments, and Vijayasaki will pick them up, and we'll see what happens, if anything.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dharmasiddhi. I enjoyed that meditation. And as I was emerging from the meditation, I remembered that image that you brought of the caterpillar. And I was thinking, yeah, because when he goes into his little chrysalis, everything dissolves, doesn't it? Before he emerges again. So that, I suppose, that's a good metaphor for a spiritual death, and something like that can happen in meditation, can't it? That you sort of have moments of just dropping everything, and it would be a bit like you dissolve a little bit.
Definitely, yeah. You get these softenings sometimes, don't you? Loosenings, glimpses of this, and these glimpses are they're so important, aren't they? Because I mean, sometimes I think of myself, I say to myself, I'm not a very good meditator, but and I haven't had profound experiences or anything like that. But I've had these sort of little glimpses, which I think just emerge probably for everyone if you're a regular practitioner, where you get a sort of flavour. It's like a perfuming of your experience, and this perfume is like the scent of a flower that is sort of like somewhere outside you, as it were. It's different, and although they're only glimpses and they get forgotten, they're so important. It's almost like the most important things that have ever happened to you in your life are these glimpses of depth or profundity, because they give you a sense of confidence that the Buddha taught is probably true. And it's not based on belief. It's not based on theory. It's based on some kind of experience. And that's direct experience, isn't it? And that's powerful, really powerful. I think that's why I'm a Buddhist actually a lot of the time, is because of, plugging away, as I was saying. It's almost like if the Buddha had only taught how to align oneself with the law of karma a bit more effectively, to have a more mature ego, that would have been good enough for me. You know what I mean? It would have still been like, it would have been a result. Do you know what I mean? But then there's this other very mysterious dimension, which is about freedom, complete freedom. I feel humble trying to even talk about it, but at the same time, it's an aspect of Buddhism that's always fascinated me. Right from the beginning, I've always been fascinated by it as well.
Yeah, and I think I wonder, I imagine that those little moments, those little glimpses, they accumulate, so in themselves they're quite small, but over time they sort of add up to something a bit more, don't they?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, definitely. It's just it's like it kind of affects your centre of gravity somehow,
Yeah,
isn't it? It's like the contents of your life doesn't change. You still work, you still have hobbies, you still have to mow the lawn on a Sunday or whatever. The content doesn't change, but somehow it's arranged around something a little with a bit more profundity, a bit more depth. So it's almost like somehow your life rearranges itself around this new centre, which is centerless, if that makes sense, because you start getting into paradox, don't you, with this phase of spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. It starts to get a little bit paradoxical. It's something that's so profound, but you can't actually will it.
yeah,
It's outside your will. It's outside anything it's outside your conceptions of it even. And yet it's tangible. It's an experience. It happens.
And of course, and I think, the more mindful we are, the more we can sort of connect with that as well. So you connect with that changing sort of that realization in a way that you're connected to something sort of quite profound.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think
Actually, there's.
Sorry, I'll go. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, there's a question actually from
Great.
Darren. Quite an interesting one. Quite an interesting question from Darren. Is mature ego still playful?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah. Darren, is there a concern that being an adult and being mature means you're responsible and serious all the time, and you've got to always, is that kind of what's coming up for you with that question? I'm wondering. Because I know what you mean, because sometimes we use the word maturity and being an adult. It can sound a bit boring, can't it, mate? But I mean, personally, I think it does. I don't know what the panel thinks, but I think it does include having a laugh.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think it's interesting, isn't it? With spirituality, it's sometimes our images of spirituality it's all quite earnest and ethical and sincere, and in some ways it is, but yeah, definitely, I'm definitely think being a human being is also having a laugh, is being playful, enjoying things. There's something about what I would say is that there's something about You know, like, for example, when I got interested in Buddhism, which was before I even got involved in Sri Ratna a long time ago, I used to read books on Zen, you know, and they're kind of a bit of a laugh, the Zen, but the Zen masters were always quite eccentric, playful, teasing kind of characters that would do sometimes rather eccentric things. But I really liked that because it sort of showed that even highly realized spiritual practitioners who were practicing very intensively in Japan, in monasteries and stuff, had a sense of humour. You know, they were very playful. And I think there's something about creativity can happen in this stage of the path, spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. It's a highly creative space as well. And I think creativity and playfulness go hand in hand, you know. There's a lot of therapies, isn't there, you know, that kind of encourage you to get in touch with your inner child and to play and get in touch with feelings and colour and paints and stuff. And I think it's that kind of spirit, isn't it? It's like creativity and play go hand in hand, you know. I certainly don't want to have a sort of, well, I grew up in Scotland, and, you know, our kind of version of religion was the Presbyterian, Calvinistic, dour, very dour kind of sort of approach to religion. You know, it's all quite serious and stuff, and I certainly don't want that kind of religion. I would never be attracted to that.
So, well, I think it might be time for announcements and things.
I think so, yeah, definitely.
So thanks very much, Dharmasiddhi, for another great meditation night. And thanks everyone for coming. Obviously, this meditation night would be nothing without you. And we really enjoy having you along, listening to your comments and sharing the practice with you. And we do this completely because we want to share our practice, we want to share the Dharma, we want to share the Buddha's teachings with you. And we do that in a spirit of generosity. And we need to sort of float our center, if you like, on that spirit of generosity. So we don't charge for our classes. We're transforming the center into what we call a dana economy, or you could call it a gift economy. So we're inviting everyone who comes to the center, whether it's online or soon you'll be able to come, you know, in body, to give your time or to give your money to sort of to help us keep this operation afloat, keep this sort of communication of the Dharma, of the Buddha's teachings, of meditation, keep it sort of flowing out into Cambridge and beyond. So please do, if you can, donate this evening. I think Liz is going to put the donate button into the chat box. And if you, many of you, I think, already do have actually a standing order with us, which is really helpful. If we have a standing order from you, that means that we can plan our activities. We know that we've got a certain amount coming in, and that means that we can plan and sort of expand our activities. And the next few weeks and months are going to be very, very interesting here at Cambridge Buddhist Centre, because we are beginning now to open up the building. Liz, who is actually our property manager, is organising volunteer days, and people are coming in, cleaning, painting. Before too long, we'll be inviting you in to meditate with us in person. And we've got all sorts of things planned. I can mention that we've got a festival called Buddha Day. So that won't happen in the building. That is still going to be an online occasion, but do come and join. I'll be leading that Buddha Day, and it's on the, I've forgotten the date. It's the last Sunday in May. So I think it's probably the 25th of May.
23rd.
The 23rd. Okay, great. Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so come along to that. There will be meditation. There'll be a little bit of input about the Buddha, and there'll be a little sort of workshop, an opportunity to connect with others, more meditation, and some ritual. And it will be a joyful, intriguing, inspiring opportunity to sort of practice together online on Zoom. So if you book onto that through our website, you'll get the Zoom link, and it'd be lovely to see you there. I'll be leading that with Yashadaka. And keep an eye on your email inbox if you're signed up with us, because we'll be keeping you informed about events that are coming up, including towards the end of July, a sort of a grand opening weekend when we're going to really celebrate the building. But there will be opportunities before that. We're sort of beginning to think about how we can take this meditation night back into the building as well. So we're planning to do that during June and July. So watch this space. We'll keep you informed. Thanks for coming. Really lovely to have you.